Okay. All right, here we go. So, welcome everybody. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. My name is Stephanie Caruth. I am the vice chair of the Private Motor Truck Council of Canada's Young Leaders Group. We are a group of under 40s that help to provide different opportunities for the next generation of leaders in the trucking industry. So for those of you who have joined, who are from PMTC member companies, you know a lot about what our organization does. But if there's anybody joining from outside of the PMTC represents interests of private fleets in Canada. And today we are hosting this webinar, the Career GPS Practical Roadmap for More Career Growth and Opportunity with Maggie Perrotin. I will introduce Maggie in a second, but just some housekeeping items before we start. If you would like to put your camera on, please feel free to do so. We just ask that you do keep yourself muted to avoid any disruptions. If you have a question, feel free to use the raise hand option and we will find a moment for you to ask. However, there is a question and answer period at the end. If you would just like to add a question into the chat, Sud Malhotra, our chair of the Young Leaders Group, will be monitoring the questions, and we're going to get started. We'd like to take a moment to welcome Maggie Perrotin. Maggie is a business and leadership coach and a former corporate operations leader who advanced multiple entry-level positions from junior account or to junior executive leadership, including director of operations and service excellence. With an over 18 plus year corporate career, she led teams across Canada and the US and supported major operational and technology transitions. She also built a reputation for driving performance through strong systems, service excellence, and people first leadership. And today, through Stairway to Leadership, Maggie helps service based business owners and various leaders develop CEO level leadership habits, build credibility, and create the results they want without burnout. She also has a podcast, which I love, and I encourage everybody to go and listen to, called The Diamond Effect. And as of right now, I'm going to turn it over to Maggie. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, everybody, for having me and for being here, taking, very precious time out of your day to learn. I really appreciate it, and I'm honored. So I will just start sharing my presentation before we start, making sure everything works. Can everybody see the presentation screen? Yes? Okay, beautiful. All right, so as I talk, feel free to raise your hand or because that will put you at the top of the window so I will be able to see, or put it in the chat if I don't see the question. The chat will address them. I'll make sure we have time at the end to do it. So I want to start with the question. So how many of you actually use Google Maps or like Waves or one of those things, GPS, in the last week to get somewhere? Me. I truly, like in Toronto, I don't leave my town without putting it on just for traffic and knowing, right? Like, how can I get to the place that I want the fastest and the easiest? Now think about that, like, how do I actually have a GPS for my career, or am I letting it to sort of happen on its own and its own devices, right? And that what we're going to talk about today. Can I be more intentional in how I grow my professional career? But before we dive in, I do want to share a little bit more about me so you can know, like, okay, where I'm from, who is this person who's going to teach me about career. So I am an immigrant to Canada. I'm originally Polish. I immigrated 21 years ago. And I started my corporate career in facility management, an industry which I actually did not know existed before I came. I just happened to be bilingual when I came, and I had one connection who worked for the facility management industry, and they were looking for bilingual agents for the call center. And because I was bilingual, I got a, job interview, and the manager who hired me liked me and said, yeah, this person, she can take calls. And I started by taking calls from buildings. So facility management industry is usually caters for larger corporations who occupy different facilities, a lot of space. Whether they own that space or lease the space doesn't matter. They kind of outsource everything to companies like I used to work for, kind of like IT, IBM, right? Big companies outsource everything IT related to IBM. They also outsource everything real estate building related to companies like I worked for. So I would take calls from the buildings literally like, hey, a light is out, a toilet overflowed, a car drove into the branch and now it's a mess and there is a problem, right? I forgot keys to my desk, whatever that was, and I would dispatch people and fix it. But through that, I discovered an industry that was interesting, that was very high paced, a lot going on. And I stayed in that and grew my career for 18 plus years until I reached like director of operations. And through that, my last role before I left to, grow my business, I was leading a team of about 30 people, and we were essentially like a beating heart to a full 450 people operations across North America. So my team kind of made sure that those people, and they were trades technicians, that they were dispatched properly, their routes were optimized, that they were going to the buildings, fixing things, maintaining things, meeting not only contractual obligations but legal, governing regulations, and everything was done efficiently at the highest level, good quality, all of that. So that, and I was also like a right hand to my VP responsible for training not only my team but the 450 people operation, for training, technology changes, change management, risk management, operational excellence. We were a critical component to the company I worked for, so we were considered a critical operation. So we had to had plans for, crisis management, all kinds of things that I was responsible for. And then in 2022, I actually left my corporate role to focus on my business, Stairway to Leadership. And then, as Stephanie said, I help business owners and different leaders grow, build skills that they need to sort of achieve the results that they want, whether it's growing their business or advancing in their career. Um, so, and the one thing that when I look back at my career, is that my path from like a call center agent to director wasn't a straight line. And it hardly ever is, right? Even when you travel far and the GPS tells you, okay, this is the fastest route, you can predict there might be an accident on the road or you will miss an exit and you have to come back, right? So then there will be things that will happen. And of course, that's life, that's normal. But when you have certain goals and you know where you're going, you can always come back, right? Or you can choose better for yourself. Okay. So by the time we're done today, you will know, like, I will leave you with three things. One is clarity of your personal brand, meaning what it really is and understanding it in a way that serves you, and maybe abolishing some like predetermined misconceptions that you have that stop you from even thinking like, can I intentionally build my personal brand? And then two, a simple way to communicate your value confidently in your career. And then third is we will start the beginning of like 6 to 12 month career roadmap. So being more intentional, thinking like, where do I want to be in the next 12 months or even 24 months, depending on where you are. Maybe you just started a position, right? So let's start with part one, and that's your personal brand. What is it and what it isn't? Because I know that some of you might like cringe a little and think like, oh, personal brand, it's just something for the entrepreneurs and like influencers, right? Who have social media followings, and that kind of feels fake, not natural. And that's not really what it is about. So yeah, we have certain misconceptions about, personal brand, thinking that it's self-promotion or that's what's on your LinkedIn profile, or, that it's fake, or just executives have that on influencer. And I would say none of it is true. The reality is that your personal brand already exists. You have it right now. Whether you thought about it, whether you intentionally build it or not, you have it because it's how you show up, right? So every time you show up to a meeting, every email you send, every project you deliver, every interaction you have, whether it's with your teammates, your bosses, your clients, you're building that brand, right? So the question is like, are you building it intentionally or are you sort of leaving it up to chance? So when I think about personal brand, I think about three pillars: professional identity, your reputation, and sort of your value proposition. So what are they? The professional identity is who you are and what you stand for. So not the job title that you hold, but actually your values as a human being, as a person, your work ethic, how you show up. So when I was a leader in corporate, even now, every time I would hire, like I figured out that I would always want to ask a person, what are your values? That was like a stable question. And usually people were surprised by it. And sometimes they didn't even know how to answer because they weren't clear on what it is, what it means. What is, for me, the values is how do I behave? What's important to me? And when I was looking for roles and so on, I always wanted to make sure that the company or the roles that I took were aligned with my values. And I'll give you examples in a second. But for example, me, like my professional identity was I'm very internally driven. So if I commit to something, I do it my best and I always get the work done. I'll always be proactive and ask for more. Like, what else can I do? I don't like to be bored in my work. So, like, let's say if I had a role and I've done all my like activities for the day or for the thing, I wouldn't just sit there and wait till the day was over. I would just go to my boss, okay, do you have anything else for me? Like, and that's just because of who I am, not because I wanted to please somebody or whatever. It's just I like to learn, like to be challenged. But then, sometimes I had colleagues or even employees who would do their work, but then if they had extra time, they would just browse and do something else, right? Not necessarily be proactive, right? The reputation is what people say about you when you're not in the room. Okay. And this one takes time to build, but it's very important. It's built through consistency. I think it's Warren Buffett who said that really all we have is reputation and it takes years to build, but it takes a moment to like ruin it. Right. So, um, for me, I would, be mentioned in the rooms at some point by executives and so on that I wasn't even in because people knew me. They knew how I showed up, what I stand for, the work that I've done because I've built reputation over the years in my corporate career in the same way I'm doing it now in the business. When I started my business, nobody knew me. I didn't have a lot of contacts. With entrepreneurs and so on because I was so focused on my corporate career. But as I'm building my business, those people who know me, they know my reputation. They know I will show up. They know I'm reliable. They know that, if I promise something, I'll deliver. And then your value proposition is the unique thing that you will bring to the table, to the role, to the company you work for that nobody else brings quite the same way because we're all unique in a sense where we all have a unique background, unique experience and unique way of looking at things and analyzing the world. So we'll have unique ideas. And that's valuable for any company that you work for. And of course, you grow that throughout your career, right? So as you change roles, you learn new skills, you have new responsibilities, that value will grow. So now think about like what do you want to be known for in your roles in your career, right? Um, and that's not about the role, like, oh, I want to be known, oh, I'm a project coordinator or I handle the clients and so on. But like think about it deeper, right? What do you want people to say about you when you're not in the room? What do you want your manager to think about you or even your colleagues, right? Um, you maybe you're the person who always brings calm to chaotic situations, or you're a problem solver, you bring solutions. Maybe you are the one who's reliable, who will never drop the ball, will not, those strengths and what you stand for are your values in action. And that's not really a job title, that's something that you bring to every job that you have. So I want you to think about it, like take a moment right now in your head and think about what are the two, three things that you want to be known for. Maybe you already are, but you never took time to kind of name them and think about them. What are those? So hold on to those. But I will give you like a quick story in two parts. So being calm, I'm pretty calm in how I show up. I'm in more of an introverted person. I'm not very extroverted. So I'm usually calm. And also I always say like working at a call center, when I would get calls from many different people, some of them were upset over little things. Some of them would call cool, calm, and collected about emergencies that were really critical for the building. So that job actually taught me to be calm no matter what was happening, no matter how client was showing up to the call, so that I can gather the information, I can listen properly, I can prioritize the call, and then send the proper, vendor assign proper emergency. So then at some point I became a facility manager for Purolator, and I managed like 1.2 million square feet, or some of their facilities in GTA, ranging from their hubs where they sort the mail to like retail stores and terminals where they dispatch. And there was a situation in the summer. So it was a weekend. I would be on call 24/7, right? When you're a facility manager responsible for facilities, there's always something happening in the building. So I would be on call 24/7. And we are a blended family with my husband. So like blended family, four kids. And there was a summer Saturday, I took the kids from like a baby to an 8-year-old to a park. And my husband wasn't there, and we walked maybe 15 minutes away from our house. There was a splash pad and so on. So we're there. I'm there alone with four kids. I'm getting a call. And I'm getting a call that a power went out in one of the critical terminals, and that's an emergency. So then I'm starting assessing, okay, by the time I get home, I'm losing 15 minutes. I would just deal with it on the spot while kind of watching. So within an hour, I had to make like 50 phone calls, getting the vendor, booting up, like getting the power generator, arranging everything because it was a critical facility. They couldn't just go without power, figuring out how long the power outage would be and so on. And I did that calm because at the same time, I had to make sure I didn't lose any of the children, right? And then when they're little, they're kind of like running around. You can lose them out of your sight. So, so I handled it, but then I'll tell you the second part of the story later. But it took me like hour and a half to handle it. I had all the contacts on my phone, so um, you know, I dealt with it. Okay, so now another part of the story in terms of like how what my career looked like and how I use my strengths or my values to grow my career. And that's what you want to also think. If I'm bringing certain strengths and value, how can I lean into that and use that to be intentional about my career? So one of the top strengths, and also like I think internal needs, is learning. As I said, like I like to learn. I like to be challenged. And if I don't understand something, my first sort of reaction is not frustration, it's just curiosity. It's like, oh, I don't get it. And if I believe that that's important for me to know, I will research it, I will learn. So when I entered the facility management industry, I really didn't know anything about it. Like in Europe, even buildings are different, right? And I came from a little town. There was no high-rise buildings. All the buildings were old. There was no air conditioning. I didn't know anything about how AC would work, furnaces, all those things, because it's so different. But I started thinking like, hey, this job is interesting. It looks like it's a good company to work with. It's a fun industry. Let me learn more. So what I started doing is asking my supervisor questions. Whenever I talked to a vendor, whether they were an HVAC company, a locksmith, or a plumber, I would ask them questions also to even learn terminology, because at that point, of course, I didn't know the technical terminology in English. So I would like create, my own glossaries of terminology. And when the company offered some learning courses for the industry, I would take them. Like I would take whatever I can to learn. So I slowly set myself up for becoming an expert in the industry, right? So understanding industry deeply, not just being a call center agent. And slowly that reputation followed me from role to role. So now the second part is communicating your value. So it's one thing to have the value, but you also need to be able to communicate it, and not just keep it to yourself in a way that's simple, that people can understand and take ownership of that communication and be proactive about it rather than just wait and for people to see, right, the work you do and understand the value. And I understand that, like, a lot of us are raised, whether it's at home or in our home countries or school, where, we're taught to be humble and work hard and maybe hope that somebody will notice and don't talk about yourself that much. But, and, don't get, I was raised like that as well. But it hurts us in our professional life, whether you're an employee or especially if you're a business owner, right? That's like you have to learn how to promote your value. Um, so, yes, it would be great to hope that every manager out there is this kind of manager who can see you for who you are and how hard you work, and they have time to notice that and be almost proactive about your career. And I had a luck to have one manager like that in my career, where they were very proactive. They could see, my potential. They would give me things even when I asked, but they could promotions or raises, like they were always one step ahead of me. And as a leader, I tried to do that, but it's very hard to do that. And we can't expect our managers to be like that, right? We can also take ownership of our own career. So you want to take action, like you want to be proactive, right, about your career. So for example, having proactive career conversations, depending on the company, you might have your annual reviews, right? But I've been in positions where even though my annual reviews were supposed to happen, my boss never had time, and they never did them, right? So like if I waited for that to have conversation about asking for more responsibility or asking maybe for the projects that where I could learn more skills and so on, I would never had that opportunity. So I had to create it. So don't be scared about creating opportunities to have a conversation with your manager, with your boss, to share your ideas or share the signal that you are engaged, that you do want more, and you're willing to, learn things that can benefit the team, but also can help you acquire skills that then will help you with your next promotion. The second thing is bring solutions, not problems. So it's one thing, like when we do our work, of course, we will see challenges, right? Um, when you are more open to understanding your role, not just in a context like, okay, here are the things that I need to do, and I just focus on that and I don't think about anything else, but more, okay, here are the things that I do, here is how they affect others, or here is the effect that it has on the clients or my teammates or the company. And as I do them and there is an external output coming in, I can see certain challenges. So it's great that you notice them, but can you also come up with ideas how to solve those challenges? your management will love that. Whether they can, implement them or not, sometimes we might have an idea for a solution that doesn't work for many different reasons and impacts another department that somehow, it's just not feasible, or it would require a lot of investment and resources, and there has to be a plan for that, and it cannot be immediately implemented. But just the fact that you're thinking outside of the box, that you think about the company as a whole and want to help solve things, already shows you're proactive, right? And then third, being someone that people can rely on. Meaning, when your boss gives you something to do, carrying it through to completion. So taking ownership in a sense that even if, let's say, you're starting to implement something and you see your roadblocks and you need something from a boss or an executive or a teammate, you take accountability for staying on them until they give it to you and not drop the ball. Oh, I told you that I needed that, and then you didn't provide that. So I didn't do what you asked me to do, but I also didn't tell you that I'm not going to do it, right? Like, my boss kind of always used to laugh at me, saying, like, Maggie, you're like a dog on the bone. If you need something, I know you'll come over and over and over until politely, but until I give it to you. So she would laugh at it. And at the same time, she would give me feedback. But I actually love that about you, because I know that when I give you something, I can forget about it. I know you'll get it done. And if you need something from me, you will just come and bug me until I give it to you, right? So that was very valuable to my bosses, right? And even as a leader, when I had an employee like that, it was super valuable to me because it made my life easier, right? As leaders, whether maybe you're, a junior leader or senior leaders, we always have so much to do. There's so much on our plate, that having somebody you can rely on and you can, give a task and they will follow through with completion is a godsend, honestly, right? And it's not easy to find. So if you can be that person, you will be super valuable. Okay. So now, how do you communicate the value? So once you're having the conversations where you're asking, either for promotion or for some challenging projects, kind of stepping up, showing that you want more, um, you don't we a lot of us, like, when we talk about what we do or how we help, we usually like default to just a task language. Oh, I managed the scheduling, even sometimes on our resumes, right? Or I dealt with the clients, I was in customer service, but that doesn't show what impact you have and what it really meant, right? So you want to do a small shift that can be very powerful. It's like connect with what you did as to what results it created and what it meant for your department or your organization. So for example, instead of saying like, hey, I managed the scheduling, I improved our scheduling process this way, which then reduced maybe gaps in coverage or avoided penalties that the company would pay if we had gaps. And then it created more predictability for the team week to week, which then improved employee satisfaction, for example, right? So, like, the formula of that is very simple. Okay, what I did, so this is the specific task, what was the result of that, and what it meant for the team or the company or whatever. So, that's how you want to communicate it, because then people see the real impact you have, the results you create, and that can open the doors. It can help you in the interview, it can help you on your resume. um, because sometimes just saying like what you did or even the result can be misunderstood. So here is the second part of my story. So when I dealt with that outage, I've dealt with everything and that was fine. But on Monday, I come to work and my boss is telling me, like, oh, one of the clients that was like a main client that was involved also in that power outage, he sort of complained that you were too calm, that he didn't feel like you took the situation with proper urgency. right? So, and I was surprised. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, this is what I did. And this is, and I had to, like, I had kids going on, like, I couldn't be freaking out. I always think about, if you had an emergency and you're going into an emergency room, would you want a doctor that's freaking out and can't make decisions because they're all like flabbergasted? Or would you want a doctor to take care of you who's calm and can assess the situation and so on? But then we actually had to communicate the value of what I did to that client. So what I did is, we created like a whole email and report. That's an extreme situation, but I, outline all the 50 calls that I've done minute by minute and how the situation was dealt and what it resulted in for the client to actually see the value. And after that, they were fine. But you can see that sometimes people see just bits and pieces of what you do and they assess it based on maybe how you behave or how they think you behave because it was all phone calls, so the client couldn't see me. So then that communication of the results you create and how you handle and the impact is critical, right? Because then you are the one controlling the narrative rather than the client filling in the client or anybody filling in the gaps. It's usually as humans, when we fill in the gaps in the missing that are missing in our story, they're usually negative or to your detriment. That's how our brain works. That's just like as human, we're wired this way. Okay. And then which communicating your value or building your brand is really also about being authentic, like being you, not trying to be somebody else or trying to sometimes when people think like personal brand or being professional, we have this temptation to almost like put a version of ourselves that's more serious, that's more, impressive, or even we think that like we need to be somebody we're not, or we need to be like somebody that maybe we admire in the role that we want and so on. And then we feel inadequate because you think like, oh, I can't really be that person, right? But it's not true. Like people who stand out in the organization in the room are really people who are the most real, who are the most confident and secure in who they are. And I will give you one example quick that I mentioned in the room before, maybe most of you joined that my husband is, I don't know, no, maybe that was previous one. So anyhow, my husband is also professional in sort of construction industry, but he's also a musician on the side. So this guy knows, I don't know, like 2000 songs with words, with artists and so on. And he has this habit of like randomly sometimes singing a song out of the blue. And, we worked together for a very short period of time where I experienced that. So he would, let's say there was a tense situation on the team or whatever, and he would just burst out singing, right? And make people laugh and so on. And that is very like him. Of course, if I tried to do it for somebody else, that would not come out this way, but he was okay being himself. And I've watched his employees love that about him. Even his managers love that about him because it was authentic, right? It's uniquely him. So the more you are who you are, the better you can perform because we do perform the best when we feel in alignment with our values and who we are, but also people get to appreciate you for who you are. And I will give you also example like a story from my own career. So when I was a facility manager, I think I was like maybe 18 months, almost 2 years into the role. And I wasn't looking for a job actively, but in the back of my mind, I was realizing, okay, I think I need a change. That role, I learned a lot in it, but I also learned that I prefer roles where I have a team that I could coach and manage. I love coaching people. Clearly, that's what I do right now. And in the facility management role, I didn't have that. Like I would have a lot of interactions with occupants of the buildings, my real estate client, my corporate real estate client, and the vendors, but I didn't have a team that reported to me. So I get a call from one of my previous managers saying, hey, there is this team that I ended up with, like the technical services team, who needs a manager for the dispatch team. They had like 8 managers in the past 8 years. The team was really struggling, and she's like, they need somebody like you. You should apply. So I replied, I'm going through an interview process. It's an internal position. And between the first and second interview, I find out I'm pregnant with my second son. So I was like, okay, well, I got to tell that to my future boss, and whatever happens, happens. But, I didn't feel comfortable not disclosing it. So I disclosed it, still got the job. But the fun part was, or the interesting part was, that that wasn't even the thing. That a few months later, once, I started in my job and developed a good relationship with my VP, he told me that he actually walked into the first interview with me having a negative bias, towards me. And why? Because, and it has nothing to do with me. It was more about the boss who recommended me. So the person who recommended me, because they had like a complicated professional relationship. So they really appreciated they recognize their professionalism and their knowledge, but they clashed a lot. So me arriving or applying to the job on her recommendation played against me, right? But I didn't know that, of course. So during the interview, I was just myself, right? I wasn't trying to impress anybody. I was just, or trying to be like my former boss or anybody. I would just answer the questions however I felt were the however I would answer and just be myself. And through that conversation, the bias dissolved clearly. Like I got the job, and I went from like -10 to really getting the job. So that's all to say that being yourself is important, right? Your personal brand isn't trying to be somebody else or pretending to be, or trying to impress people. It's just being yourself. It's actually your strongest strategy. Okay. So now how a little bit more about communicating your ambitions and communicating that how you want to grow, or where you want to grow. So as we talked about, don't wait for the annual review, and maybe your company doesn't have annual reviews, right? So try to create opportunities for yourself. Sometimes, depending on what you want to communicate, it might require a separate meeting and asking your boss, hey, like I would love to talk about opportunities or maybe additional responsibilities and so on. Can we set up, a 30-minute meeting? But sometimes it could be in 10 minutes checking, or kind of like an elevator moment that you could use to communicate it. The way I would do it, so let's say if there was a team meeting and the boss mentioned that there will be some new opportunities because the new clients were coming on board, or there was a new system being implemented, or some information. Even if at that point they wouldn't ask like, oh, well, I need help and so on, if I had a one-to-one or quick opportunity in the lunchroom to the boss, I would come up and say, hey, I'm interested in being part of it. Can I be part of it one way or the other? Because the project interests me, or I would love to learn that and I would love to help. So taking those opportunities and connecting your goals to the team goals that you're working on right now, right? So let's say how I would think about it is that, okay, I'm in call center, and my next step would be I would like to be a supervisor, right? That was my thinking. Like, okay, so if I'm a supervisor, what skill set and what is it that I would need to learn to be a better supervisor? Well, okay, how to, solve problems, or how to deal with, knowing what supervisor role in that team require, how to deal with escalations from clients and so on. So then I would go to my boss and say, hey, can you teach me how to deal with escalations? Like how to, pull the thread and find out what happened and communicate that to the client, and do those things. So I would ask for those little assignments that I knew would be required for the job that I wanted before I even got the job, right? Or I would figure out what is a specific skill that I would probably need to develop, and I would start learning about it, whether it's, so for example, for supervisor, would be like I knew that I would have to deal with people and maybe communication skills or conflict resolutions, right? So I would go to HR, we had a portal and see if there were any trainings there, and I would just take them, right? So if let's say I was working a later shift and there wasn't calls and I had everything done, then I would just go to HR portal and during that time learn or learn a little bit at home or however. Okay. So now building your career GPS. So you know who you are. Now you know how to talk about yourself. So now let's build a roadmap. And for me in my life, I've always operated that way, in a way that I want to be clear or where I'm going, even if it's not long term, even if it's the next 6, 12, 24 months. And then I would think like, okay, what are my steps? How do I get there? And then I would take those steps. And from that, I actually developed my coaching like dream plan do model, but that's how it is, right? Like, where do I want to go? What are the steps that I can take that I can see make sense, and then starting to take those steps. So that's your career GPS, right? I want you to think about that. Like, if everything went the way you would like to, or you could reach whatever role you want, wherever you want to be, where do you want to be in the next 12 to 24 months? Okay, that's step one. When you have a GPS, the first thing you enter is location. Okay, this is where I want to go. And being clear on that allows you to be intentional about then steps that you're going to take. Then now the second part is the route, right? Okay, so if I want to be there, how do I get there? What do I need? Do I need certain skills? What type of actions do I need? The first might be, hey, I want to understand, maybe I think I want to have that role, but I don't fully understand what that role requires. So maybe the first step is just finding out what that role requires. Or maybe the first step is talking to somebody who had that role in the past and I can learn from them, right? How was it and so on, if I'm not sure. But if I'm sure, then thinking about the skills or what do or checking, I don't know, portal. Are there any, is there an even posting or having a conversation with my boss? And then holding yourself accountable and having some checkpoints like, am I on track? So let's say if I do want to consider moving up, what are my steps in the next month? What would I want to do? Maybe within a month, I want to talk to my boss about it, or maybe I want to take this course on the portal, whatever that is, right? Most people don't have that. So then they are kind of driving blind. But when you can take those steps, you're more proactive. And you're not the most people. You want to be intentional. When we're intentional, we can create better results in our lives and professional careers because we're intentional and proactive about it. So, yeah, there's two ways you can manage your career, right? You can be reactive and proactive. Reactive is more, I'll wait for the boss to notice me. I update my resume. Maybe I'm fed up with my job or I'm not happy anymore, right? And then you learn, or you only learn skills when the job requires it. And then you kind of like wait for the promotion to happen or wait for the posting to happen. Whereas proactive is more, I know where I want to go in the next 12, 24 months. So I'm building towards it. I'm already taking courses. I'm volunteering for this project or that project or raising my hand. I'm developing the skills before I have the title. Maybe I'm, growing also my network, right? Maybe I'm looking for a mentor who's done something like that, or building a relationship with, somebody in another department because that's where I ideally would like to be. Um, so I ask for the opportunities before even anything is posted. And it's not like reactive approach is wrong. It's just keeps you behind and more at the mercy of what's happening. With a proactive approach, you're in the driver's seat. Does not mean everything will go exactly how you plan. It does not mean everything will go perfectly, but you're more in control. Okay. Um, So here is something like I personally did through my career. For the purpose of this presentation, I called it like 50% rule. As I was thinking about it, but what was happening for me, and because I like to learn and I like to grow, when I was settled in the role, so sometimes it was a year, sometimes it was a couple years, or year and a half, and I was doing well. Whenever I started to feel comfortable, I knew that that was the time for me to start thinking, okay, what's next? Because sometimes, and I've seen that even in my employees, the comfort often leads to complacency, and then complacency leads for us to have that dissatisfaction. Like we start getting in it. Of course, the timing is different for everybody, but we start having that moment where we're like kind of not challenged anymore. We get a bit bored, and from that comes a bit of dissatisfaction with the role. And if we don't recognize it, like we might become even almost negative towards what do we do, rather than be proactive and say like, okay, I'm getting comfortable. That means soon, like I will be a bit bored. What's my next role? And I've done that every time I've gotten a bit bored and comfortable. And it didn't mean that I was leaving right this moment, but I was already starting to plan, okay, what is my next role? What skills can I get? Can I assign, can I again sign myself up for a course, do something extra? And then that was allowing me to progress. So when I was a senior call agent, I knew I wanted to be a supervisor. So I started working towards that. Then when I was a supervisor, I wanted to be a manager, right? And then when I kind of like spend my way in the operations center thinking I need a different role, I need to really shift and learn, then, I looked for opportunity to be a facility manager and so on and so forth. So that like when you create that head start for yourself, it can speed up your transition and also make it smoother, make it easier in the new role because you've already kind of started preparing yourself for it. And another thing that I want to challenge, something that maybe some people don't think about and might hold you back, is that idea that career has to be linear, or has to be like not even linear, but straight line upwards. That every time I change a role, it has to be like a bigger role on the step ladder. Or a promotion. My path personally wasn't that all the time. I actually changed twice positions where there were, in terms of like the company's role profile, they were linear move. So they weren't promotions. They were moved from the same level to the same level. It's just the roles allowed me. They were so different that they allowed me to learn very different skills. So I wasn't promoted. Like when I moved from as manager in the ops center to the facility manager was the same level, but it was a very different role. It's, as a team manager, I was coaching, leading teams, scheduling, training, doing different things. But then as a facility manager, I had a budget to run. I dealt with contractors, with the clients. I actually managed smaller construction projects, right? So very different skill set. And then I did that again from the facility manager to when I my first role in the technical services. But what it ultimately led me to, I became a subject matter expert in my organization because I had understanding of many different business lines and a cycle that the client would go through in terms of operational requests and so on. So then it allowed me to be, as a then at the different roles, and even as a director, it allowed me to be involved in corporate initiatives because I had an understanding of how different department works. So it made me more valuable to the organization because of that. So sometimes when you're evaluating a career opportunity, you don't, of course, everybody has your own goals and your own thing, but sometimes like considering even a lateral move might be a good way to gain skill sets and learn something you would never have opportunity to learn otherwise, that then can help you progress much faster later. So it's just like food for thought in that. Okay, I gotta speed up. Almost there. So we have time for questions. Okay. So the three lanes of your career GPS. There is skills, right? So like if I'm moving up, what are the skills that I will need to be successful in that job or even moving laterally? And is there something that I can start now to prepare myself for it? Then there might be relationships. So who do I need to know? Not in terms of socializing, not only, but strategic relationships. Maybe there's somebody who I know who is doing what I want to do in the next 3 to 5 years. Maybe I can ask them to be my mentor, right? Or maybe I can develop a relationship for somebody who can advocate for me for the new role, right? Who can mention my name in the rooms that I'm not have. And then action. So what is it that I'm going to do specifically this week or this month and in the next 3 months in the next year to get myself closer to where I want to be? So I have a worksheet for that that will be shared with everybody to sort of help you map out your next 6 to 12 months, starting with where do I want to be, right? What are the 2, 3 skill set that will help me get there? What are some people that maybe I can connect with? And then what is the action that I would do this week or this month? All right. So, in closing, your career won't manage itself, but you can influence it with the GPS, right? You will never get lost. Have a clarity on your personal brand. You have a formula, you learn the formula, how to communicate it. Start like thinking and being more proactive as to where you want to be. And even if the action this week is getting very clear for you, like what are your strengths and what are your values? What is important to you? Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. I'm gonna thank you here, but I'm gonna stop sharing and happy to answer questions.
We don't have anything online yet.
I do have one, something that you said. I actually like I wrote it down and I picked it out. So you mentioned that being professional doesn't mean being a polished version of someone else.
Yeah.
How can you, because I know like and I've struggled with this before in the past where um you are almost scared to kind of put yourself out there personally, right? Like, it's very easy to talk
Yeah.
about like your professional accomplishments and what you've done, but being your like authentic self in a professional environment can create a lot of anxiety. What are some strategies that you can use or things that you can do to kind of get yourself out of that?
So definitely trying and doing the thing. So how we operate is like when we've never raised hands and we've never spoke up in a meeting and so on, our brain will be scared and will like make us scared even more, right? So being putting yourself out there, it's not waiting for the time when you're not scared. You will be scared, so doing it anyway. So learning how to or allowing yourself to be scared and feel the discomfort and yet still do it. And it might be in the small ways at first. Maybe, if you're very introverted and you're not speaking up even in your team meetings, maybe raising your hand in a team meetings with people that you know that you feel comfortable and starting there. And then once you're there, you will see that the more you do it, the less scared you are, the more anxiety you feel. And then once you do that, then maybe you speak up in like a larger meeting, right? Or maybe at first you never talk to your boss, you're never proactive, then start with your boss. And then you realize, oh, I would love like this other senior manager from a different department, ask them questions because they're doing something I'm interested. So once I'm comfortable with speaking to my boss, maybe I would just, running in the elevator or in a lunchroom, I would just approach them and talk to them. It's really in practice. Now, one thing that can help you is breathing exercises. So there's this very simple box breath that you inhale on 4, you hold on 4, you exhale on 4, and you hold on 4. If you do it 4 times, it can really calm you down. If you have, even if you have anxiety, so something when you start the morning, do this, do this box breath or doing it in the bathroom, it can calm you down and then hopefully allow you to have courage to do the first step. Because ultimately, we all feel fear, but we also, I always say, like, courage is antidote to fear. If you didn't have, if the fact that you feel fear, that means you have courage. And all you need is a little bit of courage to like do the one thing. And the more you do it, the less you will fear of, of that things.
Hmm,
Hopefully.
thank you.
I have a question. We don't
Yeah.
have anything online, but I do have a question that you did mention the importance of lateral move, that shouldn't be like that should be an avenue as well as an
Mhm.
alternative if you don't have any other way of like progressing. Um, but some of us like maybe in a very technical role and do
Mhm.
not have a multiple swim lanes to be able to try different those jobs and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
In case if your company does not have that as an avenue, is there any particular strategies to kind of like still be able to have challenges in your existing job, or
Mhm.
having to find other avenues to be able to get motivated, stay motivated to be able to
Mhm.
do your day to day?
So I would say, like, of course, it depends on your goals. If you really want, right? Like, I'm not advocating you have to leave your employer, but like that might need to be the case if you really don't have anywhere to go, or you could, another way. So, for example, you don't have an opportunity to move laterally, but also, let's say the promotion or opportunities are not coming as often. Of course, it depends on the organization you're working for. Then maybe getting involved in some projects, or maybe like starting a project. Maybe you're seeing an opportunity for the company to benefit and nobody's tackling it because it's not a priority or there's no people and so on, and seeing like, hey, like, I really think we should do it. How about I start it? Right. And yes, I also know that it depends on the time you have. And sometimes we're, when we're so busy, maybe it's hard, but maybe then creating a little team of other people who would want to be a little bit challenged because they've been in the roles and they're kind of bored a little bit, right? So maybe creating a team and side project, or just getting involved in a project in a different department that just helps you develop certain skills, or, you know,
Thank you.
welcome. Any other questions? Looks like Travis might have a question.
Travis May.
Yeah. Hey,
Yeah.
Maggie. One question I wanted to ask is, I was just curious that if at any point throughout your career roadmap, you maybe hit a roadblock or hit a speed bump. Maybe you
Yeah.
had an elevator moment with your boss, took the initiative, were proactive about it, and maybe it didn't
Yeah.
go the way you wanted. Maybe how to handle some adversity or anxiety from
Mhm.
that. Maybe if you had a specific example on how you did that.
I have a specific. So when I was I was a team manager of the dispatch team. So I was in the technical services, the 450 people. We were growing year over year. So it ended up being 450. But when I started in that department, we were smaller. And so I turned around the dispatch team, and they were functioning really well, which helped the whole organization grow, because if that team wasn't operating, then the techs couldn't be optimized. Like, it was a mess at first. So I was getting to the point when I was like, I need more, because that was also a lateral move for me from facility manager. I need more. And the opportunity came up to sort of be a director of that team and another team that I really wanted. But I am so, like, facility management, or at least the company I worked for, it was really engineer based, right? So it's very technical. I'm not an engineer at all. Like, all my knowledge was just self-taught, right? I was bringing more of that people leadership, operations. I really think in systems, and but also I'm good with people. So that's what I was complementing all the engineers with, that I always thought. But anyhow, so that role was positioned in a way where I didn't qualify, even though I knew I could do it just based on my experience. And my boss told me that, but then he said, and it was a different boss, and then he said, you know what, like there is this strategic information position that's gonna be open. You would be good at it, you should take it. And I wasn't super happy because it was very analytical. Don't get me wrong, I like to analyze, but creating reports, it's not my thing. Like, could I do it? Yes. And I like to think, but I wanted more. I wasn't getting what I wanted, but I also didn't want to stay. So I took it. Okay. Now that it was a promotion, but I lost my team. So I couldn't, like, again, I loved my team. So I lost my team in a sense where I didn't have anybody. But I always look at, like, okay, if that's how it needs to be right now, A, it's never permanent. And B, what's the silver lining? What can I take out of it? Right. So what I
Mhm.
took out of it is honed my business analytics skills. Right. So, like, I've gotten better at Excel. I've gotten better at looking at different numbers because that was not only like financial, but also operational, helping people, make better decisions. And I always look, what else can I learn and how can I get myself inserted in things that I
Mhm.
wanted to. So that was that specific example. So of course I don't know what. I stayed in that role again for a year and a half, and then opportunity came for me to be back director of operations, right? Because the company kept growing, so you can never predict what will happen down the line.
Mhm.
Um, so like I took that opportunity, but in the meantime, I kind of took a job that I didn't necessarily want. I just made the best out of it.
For sure.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much. Great presentation. Thank you.
Does anyone have any other questions? It does not look like it. I think we're done.
All
Um,
right.
well, thank you so much, Maggie. We really appreciate you coming and
You're
presenting to
welcome.
us. Just a reminder to everybody in the room that the presentation will be sent out along with the worksheet and the resources from Maggie. I highly recommend you check out her podcast, or if you are ever looking for a business and leadership coach, to reach out to her. I know she's done exceptional things for myself and my own business, and hopefully you guys can get the value out of that too. Yeah, and if anybody has any other questions or if they need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to the Young Leaders Group. If anybody has any young leaders in their business that they would like to maybe put into the Young Leaders Group, we are looking for new members to join us. But yeah, other than that, I think we can end it here.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
It was
you.
a pleasure.
Have
Thank
a
you
good
so
day, everybody.
much.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day.